I wasn't actually going to do a post-fight review for this Zelfa Barrett Ronnie Clark fight, but a number of people have asked for it, so here it is. Now, I cover the vast majority of the major fights on this channel, and I also cover the weekly or monthly goings on of most of the major fighters in terms of who they're fighting next, their training situations, etc., etc., potential matchups. So I cover the vast majority of the major stuff. When it comes to covering prospects, I'm a lot more selective with regards to who I cover because of time constraints. I can't cover every prospect in boxing. There's not enough hours in the day. So I'm very selective about which prospects I cover and which prospects, I make videos about. Especially when they're unheralded, they don't have a lot of people talking about them or whatever. Now, when I go and have a look at a prospect, there's two criteria that the prospect needs to fulfill in order for me to actually start making videos about them. One, they have to be either entertaining, or two, they have to have potential. I have to look at them and think, yeah, this kid has got the potential to do something big, to go all the way maybe. They have to have one of those two things, preferably both. So a lot of people were telling me about Zelfa Barrett over the past few months. So I went to have a look at Zelfa Barrett, a couple months ago, and he didn't tick either of those boxes for me. I didn't see anything particularly entertaining about what he was doing in the ring, and his talent didn't make me sit up and take notice. I didn't look at him and think, oh, this kid's got potential. I just saw a run-of-the-mill British prospect. That's what I saw when I looked at Zelfa Barrett, which is why prior to this I've never made a video about him before, despite the fact that I knew about him. I'd seen a couple of his fights and several people had told me, are you going to cover Zelfa Barrett? So look, I could be completely wrong about him. He could go on to be the next Bernard Hopkins for all I know. Right? I'm not writing him off, but I'm just telling you the reasons why I haven't covered him up until this point, even prior to this Ronnie Clark fight where he suffered his first loss. I looked at some of his fights previously. He'd been fighting journeyman, and to me, I didn't see anything particularly entertaining about his style or what he was doing, and I didn't see any standout talent there. I didn't see any standout potential. There are other prospects out there who I do make videos about, people like Daniel Dubois, Nathan Gorman, Anthony Yard, Joshua Boatsi, Lawrence Okoli. Those guys have at least one of the two criteria I'm looking for, if not both, whereas Zelfa Barrett didn't have either of them. So when it came to this Ronnie Clark fight, which he lost obviously, I wasn't surprised by the fact that he lost. I mean, I've never even watched Ronnie Clark fight before, but I wasn't surprised that Zelfa Barrett lost his first step up to domestic level, because again, I didn't see any kind of standout potential in Zelfa Barrett when I'd watched him fight before. The Ronnie Clark fight was a good fight, and let me tell you some positive things about Zelfa Barrett and what he did show. He showed mental strength in there because he got dropped in the fight. It was a very, very tough fight for him. He didn't fall to pieces mentally. He kept it together. He survived, and he came through a very, very tough fight. So that is a good thing. That is mental strength. A lot of fighters who are stepping up for the first time, they fall apart when they're in this type of tough situation, whereas Zelfa Barrett didn't. He held it together, so that's definitely a good thing. He went to 12 rounds, so he's got the stamina. Although when it comes to small guys like this, Zelfa Barrett is a super featherweight. When it comes to small guys like this, there's very few of them who have stamina problems. Stamina problems are more for the bigger guys. Guys, when you're talking about maybe light welterweight and upwards, that's where you tend to get more guys with stamina issues, particularly light middleweight. Then there's quite a few guys, but the little guys generally can do 12 rounds and 10 rounds and whatever at a good clip without too much trouble. So the fact that he could do 12 is no real revelation for a super featherweight. I mean, pretty much every super featherweight of any kind of, even as the slightest talent, can do 12 at a decent clip. So yeah, he showed that he had the stamina, he had the heart to come through the crisis, the mental strength, and he will definitely learn from this Ronnie Clark fight. He'll understand the level that he has to surpass in order to go the places that he wants to go in boxing. So maybe this will spur him on. Maybe there were issues going into the fight, and maybe he'll be able to rectify those issues. I don't know. I'm just purely speculating here. Again, he was dropped in the fight, he came back from it, and what have you. And most of the comments, as you see here, I mean, some of them say talking about hype job, but a lot of them are saying that he is still young enough to come back and he's still a good prospect and all that kind of business. So yeah, it was a good fight. You can watch it, see what you think for yourselves. It wasn't a thriller in Manila or anything, but it was a decent fight, and it was clear from relatively early on in the fight that Zelfa Barrett was in trouble, that this wasn't going to be a routine win for him or anything like that. This was the first guy that he fought who had actually come to fight, who had any ambition and any ability. Prior to this, it was all journeyman. So that is not really a good sign. You know, he stepped up to domestic level and he's been beaten. But again, there are many fighters out there who turned out to be great, and they started with losses early on in their career. Johnny Nelson, I mean, well, let me not say great, but he was at least good. He was at least one of the best cruiserweights of all time. Some people might say great. He started off with losses. Bernard Hopkins, you know, plenty of fighters who went on to do big things in boxing and become world level fighters. They started off with losses early on in their careers. Marvin Hagler lost a couple of his early fights. So, and I'm not writing Zelfa Barrett off, but I haven't seen anything of him that I would regard, you know, that would make me think he's got any kind of standout potential. And I don't find him particularly entertaining in his style and his ability and all that kind of, I don't see any incredible speed. I don't see any serious punching power. I don't see, you know, to me he just looks fairly run-of-the-mill right now. Maybe you guys feel different. So yeah, those are my thoughts on it, people. Shout out to Ronnie Clark. You know, he did well. A veteran, guy's in his early 30s, early mid 30s, so he did well. He upset a prospect, and he'll go on to take advantage of this situation by getting, you know, bigger fights and bigger paydays, and that's what it's all about, particularly for a veteran like Ronnie Clark. You know, it's about making as much money from the sport as he can while he's still young enough to compete. So I'm sure he will get quite a bit of mileage off this particular victory. So, you know, shout out to him. But yeah, other than that, man, that's all I got to say about Zelfa Barrett. I'll probably disappoint some of you. You probably, maybe some of you were fans of Barrett and really hyped up about him as a prospect. But personally, I wasn't, you know. So that's why I'm not particularly really fussed about him losing or covering this particular. I wasn't even going to cover the fight because it was only because there was so many people getting at me about it that I decided to do the video. But yeah, nonetheless, there it is. Those are my thoughts on Zelfa Barrett and his fight with Ronnie Clark. Let me know what you felt in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out.